Hello, friends, and welcome to a new episode of Readings That Heal with me, Marissa of Marissa Moments, where I'm sharing divine words for the day, real life stories, and channeled messages that aim to trigger a spark of your divinity, awaken your spirit, and connect you back to your true self. Now, be warned, this is about divine accountability and self-reflection. So if you're here, it's because you're ready to work and heal. Now, let's get into it. Okay, so the word for today is returns. Returns. So here's a story that Spirit wanted me to share with you. You ever buy something because you swore that you needed it just to realize that it was anything but? Okay, so me personally, I've bought things over the years and would try it and just to realize that the purchase was actually for somebody else. It wasn't for me because, it just didn't work out, right? It didn't make my life easier. It didn't transform me and it didn't elevate me. So I would earmark it for return. Then life would happen, and I'd forget to return it. So now I'm stuck with it because I missed the return window because we're talking about returns, right? Now, here's the thing, right? Many of us have been living our lives like we've missed the return window. Perhaps you spent a lot of time, energy, or even money on something, but somewhere along the way, you realized that it was just not for you. Now, it's not because you didn't try to make it fit or work or align. It just wasn't and isn't for you. Now, here's the thing, right? God wants you to understand that there is no limitation or expiration window on returns because we're talking about returns, right? What's more is that he wants you to recognize what is and is not for you because guess what? When we start to recognize and get in alignment with the things that are intuitively for us, the things that spark a flame of excitement within our soul. Now, I talked about excitement in a previous podcast. Go find it, go listen, right? But when we find those things, God loves that. God, Spirit, Gaia, ancestors, angels, and saints love that because you know what? It not only draws us closer to ourselves, but then in turn, it draws us closer in to him, she, they, doesn't matter, right? So the bottom line to this bottom line is sometimes, we might spend a lot of time working on something and thinking about something, and we might even swear up and down. We could share it with the world, right? It's kind of like when you go to college and they have you declare a major. Right. And then after like a year or two in, you realize this isn't for me. But then you've already put in that time commitment and even money. Right. And now you're on that bubble and trying to figure out like, oh, my goodness, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? My parents going to kill me because they're paying or we got student loans or whatever the situation and circumstance is. However, here's the thing. You could decide to continue on with that same major just because, you know what, I already put some investment into it. Or you can admit to your truth and say, you know what, I realize that this is not for me. I really tried to make it work, but it's just not for me. And then you find what you do is you open up that door to opportunity to find the thing that is for you. Whether that mean you stay in college and choose a different major and now all of a sudden you're awake, right? Because that's the thing too. When it comes down to it, sometimes when we find ourselves in zombie mode, right? We're doing anything to distract ourselves. We are on the never ending loop of reels that eats up our hours and our days. We are doing anything and everything but the thing we're supposed to be doing. And you want to know why that is? Because it's not in alignment with who we are intuitively, spiritually, divinely, however else we can say the same thing, right? And instead of working on trying to adjust our situation and circumstances, now, of course, this doesn't necessarily apply to every single one at every single point, because sometimes we just got to do what we got to do, right? Not everybody wants that same job or what have you, but sometimes we got to keep the lights on. So that's understandable. But at the same time, what Spirit, God, Gaia, ancestors, angels, and saints is saying that window for returns has not closed. right? Regardless of how long you've invested your time and energy and whatever it is into maybe that career, right? That you swore up and down was your end all be all, into that major in school that you swore up and down was who you wanted to be, right? Even though you declared it when you were still a baby, and now you're growing up and recognizing that this no longer is in alignment, right? This no longer excites me. This no longer interests me, right? No, the returns are still good. The returns are still good. But here's the thing, right? Because we can't also use the returns because you know how sometimes stores have that return policy, right? Stores have their return policy and you have to adhere to them. I mean, for the most part, right? There's always ways around it, but let's not talk about that. So here's the thing. When it comes down to that return policy, when it comes to God, Gaia, ancestors, angels, and saints, what I'm receiving right now is that doesn't mean that you could just return anything because you're like, never mind, right? You have to put in the effort. You have to put in the actual work. You have to actually think about it. You can't just touch your toe in the water and go to every single tub and say, nah, because eventually you're going to run out of options. Right? But what God is saying is that when it comes down to it, when it's something that is really a calling in your spirit, it's going to keep calling. And you don't have to worry about, oh my goodness, do I have my receipt? Do I have do I have the necessary paperwork to take it back and return it? Now, of course, we're talking about divinity. We're talking about, even like on the tangible level, we're talking about your position in life. We're talking about the people you surround yourself with. We're talking about the clothes you decide to wear. We're talking about the way that you present yourself to the public. We're talking about the things that you choose to entertain, right? Listen, when I was younger, I listened to different music. I mean, I still listen to basically everything now, but here's the thing. Now hear me, right? I need you to hear me. Is that the music that I listened to in my teenage years, even though, it makes me a little bit nostalgic when I hear it every now and then now, that is not what I have on consistent rotation in my playlist currently, right? Because I've elevated. It no longer aligns with who I am currently and who I am becoming, right? So maybe I listened to some old angry music when I was a teenager because, angst and all. And, I was living in the struggle and all that type of stuff. So I had my music reflect where I felt I was in that moment, physically and mentally. And now that I've elevated, now that I've recognized the connection that music may have to my spirit and how I feel throughout the day, I make it reflect how I want to feel. I make it reflect where I want to go, right? We're talking returns. I had to return that old music and recognize and realize what is for me now. Now, listen, here's the other part of returns, right? The part that maybe you don't even want to think about. You've experienced it, but you don't really want to think about it because when it comes down to your spirit, especially for like chosen ones, right? And call it what you will, chosen one, starseed, light worker, however it is, it's your truth, walk in it. But the thing of it is that sometimes when we refuse to make the returns ourselves, God's going to return it for us. Now, listen, have you ever been fired from a job? You didn't even like that job. And then you got fired and now you're like, oh man. You think that that's your end all be all. And now where am I going to get my check? Where am I going to get my funding? Where am I going to get my whatever? Right. And then maybe it be a couple of weeks later or a couple of years later, you end up landing a position that puts you in a better position. Right. Now, I need you to hear me, because if we are not willing to go along with what our spirit is saying, God, Gaia, ancestors, angels, and saints might just force your hand in the situation and say, listen, you're not using this. This is not for you. That's like me picking up a unicycle right now and swearing I'm about to learn that as a trade. Now, I mean, maybe I will, but I probably won't, because that just doesn't resonate with my spirit. And so now I'm going to have this unicycle that I'm never going to use, right? So maybe Spirit is going to have somebody come along that actually does want it. And we're going to have a conversation and they're going to say, I've always wanted one, but I could never get one. I could never afford one. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give them that unicycle. And that's God saying, listen, here's the returns, right? It's time to make those returns. Let's talk about friendships. Let's talk about relationships, right? We're talking returns. Sometimes we hang out with people and be like, man, I've known so-and-so since I was 2. Now, that's a beautiful thing. I'm not trying to put anything down or anything like that, but you have to take these messages as they resonate, right? So the thing of it is, Spirit has put it on my heart to share with you. You know, those relationships where you've known each other since you were 2 years old, knee high to a grasshopper, right? You were playing in the sandbox together. And then all of a sudden your life start going in different directions. Now, maybe you can be the yin and yang of friendships and all of those types of things. And maybe you still support each other and all those things, right? And that's a beautiful thing because you know when it's a love, when it's almost like becomes family, right? As opposed to just being a friend. However, on the flip side of that coin, there are certain circumstances where maybe you've grown apart. Maybe you no longer have any of the same interests and now you just hanging out because I've known them since I was 2. And now you feel tethered and tied and obligated to associate with this person that you no longer have anything in common with. And want to know what's going to end up happening? One, you're probably going to build up some sort of resentment towards each other because you just can't see eye to eye, right? I mean, that's a possibility. Or 2, God might even move you. God will change a physical location when it's time to make some returns. If you're not making that return, God will relocate you to a different state. How about that? Have you ever experienced that? Because we're talking about returns. Listen, I'm not going to keep going on and on because Spirit keeps giving me all these situations and scenarios and something is resonating with you. That's how you know this message is for you. But what we need to do is get past those different scenarios and thinking about all those different ways and of potential returns and the returns that have happened already in the past, right? Reflecting on them because you already have that in your mind. And that Spirit saying, yes, this message is for you, but to take it even further because we're talking about divine accountability. We're talking about action. We're talking about healing, right? When it comes down to these returns that come to our mind and to our heart so naturally and easily, right? That means that there's room for application. Now, how that application looks, you have to dive deep, right? You have to go within yourself, within your spirit, and maybe you have to reach out to someone else to give you assistance in this matter. Now, listen, any of these words, any of these messages that I deliver, it is not to say that you have to do everything on your own. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be delivering these messages, right? You would have probably, and you probably have, but you would have come up with these messages on your own because it's in you too. Right? I'm just tapping in and sharing my gifts with you right now. You have the potential the whole time, but that's a whole different story, right? Now, the thing of it is, and the thing I want you to realize and recognize is that you do not have to do this alone. Whether you choose to reach out to me or to someone else, make sure you are reaching up. Okay, we can't reach across the table. We can't reach down because then we're going to be putting in our effort to try to pull somebody else back up. When it comes down to this application of the things that we feel divinely in our spirit that we need to start working on to get closer to our healing and to our actual ascension and growth and progress, and how many ways can I say the same thing? Then don't be ashamed to reach out to someone who can help you. Why do you think they exist? Right? Because here's the thing. I'm going to keep saying it. We're talking about returns. Maybe you have to return a notion, right? Maybe you have to return the notion that therapy is only for crazy people, right? Because we know at this point that is not true. That might have been a statement that was carried by people of the past, and maybe it's a statement that's carried by people of today, but that is not facts. Therapy, counseling, all of these different types of things and beautiful beings that exist on this planet are here to help bring clarity, to help bring healing and function and fortitude and resilience and a toolbox in order to be able to deal with whatever situation and circumstance you might be going through, right? But we're talking about returns. Listen, I've already talked for over 14 minutes now about returns, so you should have picked up what I'm putting down by now. I'm not going to keep going on and on, but get down deep, figure out where in your life God, Gaia, ancestors, angels, and saints are telling you that you need to make returns, and then walk that direction. I'm not saying you have to do it instantaneously. I'm not saying you're going over to a big box store and putting something on the counter. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But sometimes it's taking you this long to hang on to something. Sometimes it's going to take a while to get rid of it too, right? Slowly but surely. But once you start walking a certain path, then you will eventually get to that destination. The key word and key point is to start. So that's it. I'm not going to keep going on and on. But remember, the word of the week is returns. That's it. And as always, you already know when this message resonates, that means it's for you. Or if it resonates for someone that you love and hold near and dear, share it with them, right? Use your discernment. If you know that somebody's going to be offended, then maybe not, right? Maybe hold off till next week, or bring it up in a conversation and to be like, hey, I listened to a podcast about that. Let me send it to you, and then share it, right? We're not trying to ruffle any feathers here, right? Cause any drama, because we're moving away from drama. That's a whole nother podcast. Anyway, so be sure to check the archives. There are so many messages waiting for you to hear so that you can heal, right? And in addition to that, there's a new podcast episode every single week, Monday morning, 5:55 a.m. Central Standard Time, United States time. So tune in every single week. And then find me all over social media, because I'm literally everywhere, you guys. And if you can't find me on your social media platform, just send me a message and I'll be there too, right? Because nothing better than walking this healing journey, this spiritual ascension journey, than to walk it with a friend. So make sure that you find me, you friend me, you follow me, you reach out, you like, share, comment, all of those good things, because again, let's walk together. But that's it for now. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the best day ever. Until next time, you know the vibes. Peace and happy healing.